Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, people in the Zoom world. Thank you all for being here on this crispy autumn/winter day. I've been thinking about when does autumn become winter? I live surrounded by a lot of trees and birds and a big garden, and it's not exactly what day or what time of year, but I go, oh, when is it winter and when is fall over? And there are a lot of trees on my property, native trees, white oak, black oak, maple, madrone, and numerous other species, wild cherry. And they all drop their leaves, and we actually rake the leaves and harvest them, and it takes quite a bit of effort. And I consider it actually a crop that I don't actually grow. Nature grows it. So we rake all the leaves, and we put them on the garden. And it's very good fertilizer. And trees are quite interesting to me in the sense that they're rooted in the earth, so in a dark, moist soil. And of course, their branches are out in sunlight. And there's this interesting process. There are many processes in trees where there's two pathways of energy. One comes up from the roots up to the leaves or needles, and one comes down from the leaves and needles to the roots. And it's the xylem and the phloem, it's two Greek words. And they're energy pathways that are pretty amazing. They're non-mechanical, and they're moving all this energy through these pathways. And it's part of the dynamics of the food chain, which we're part of. And so it's a fascinating process. And in our meal chants, we chant, "May we realize the emptiness of the three wheels, giver, receiver, and gift." So when we say that, we're acknowledging the dynamics of the food chain, which we're part of, and also the spiritual element of that. So it's a lovely process. So leaves aren't such a nuisance, really. So today is the third talk in a three-part series on the Heart Sutra. We're exploring the wonderful Heart Sutra. Most of you have been, I recognize your faces, you've been around for the first two, so we won't delve into that really, except that we touched on last week the roots of the Heart Sutra unfolding on Vulture Peak, and Lord Buddha is on Vulture Peak, sitting in samadhi in deep silence, and Avalokiteshvara is by his side, and then there's a circle of disciples there. And Avalokiteshvara is receiving the teachings silently. That's the roots of Zen. And Shariputra, one of the disciples, considered a very wise disciple, who's steeped in the teachings of the Sarvastivadins. It's a sect in northern India, a Buddhist sect, that were deep into the practice of knowledge and really working with the skandhas, observing what it is that constitutes being a human being. So Shariputra is very, very educated and practiced in jhana, in knowledge. So they really prize knowledge. as our society does, which is a good thing, very much so. And so Shariputra comes forth and asks a question to Avalokiteshvara. How should a noble daughter or a noble son train? And so that really is the beginning of the teachings of the sutra. And it starts with a question, a very important question. So Avalokiteshvara will proceed to instruct Shariputra in the light of Prajnaparamita, the great bodhisattva in our presence. And so Avalokiteshvara, bodhisattva, when deeply practicing Prajnaparamita, clearly saw that all 5 aggregates are empty and thus relieved all suffering. So, quite a statement. So Avalokiteshvara is within the womb realm of Prajnaparamita with Buddha. And this is where that teaching is coming from. So this way of being juxtaposed with knowledge is radically different. And so this is the instructions to Shariputra, very wise, knowledgeable being given a much different and radical teaching. Thus is the nature of the Heart Sutra. The 5 skandhas, Sanskrit, also I believe that translates to heaps, also known as the 5 aggregates: form, sensation, perception, formation, and consciousness. First one being form, and actually what that refers to is matter, and not just shapes and what have you, but it's matter. So it's all the matter that we can see. It's the matter of our bodies, which that's one of the first things. It's quite noticeable that we're living with is this form. So form, sensation, perception, formation, and consciousness. And so Shariputra was trained in observing and meditating all of these skandhas and analyzing them and questioning them. We don't particularly do that in Zen. We sit and we analyze our mind, the way I'm trained, and many others. But we don't deconstruct and analyze so much. It will come out in other ways, but not in an analytical, minute detail way of all the minutiae of what it is to be a human being. We express that in various other ways and creative ways. Forms, sensations, perceptions, formations, and consciousness. So it's worth considering and meditating on. So if I'm observing form, this grape arbor, with my eye, so there's form out there, there's the organ of my eye, there's the act of seeing, and then there's my consciousness that's processing that. And they're all separate according to knowledge. In the spirit of the Heart Sutra, they are not. Form itself is emptiness. Emptiness itself form. Sensations, perceptions, formations, and consciousness are also like this. Shariputra, all dharmas are marked by emptiness. They neither arise nor cease, are neither defiled nor pure, neither increase nor decrease. Therefore, given emptiness, there are no forms, sensations, perceptions, formations, or consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind. No sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or objects of mind. And so forth down to no realm of sight and no realm of mind consciousness. So there are all these negations, all these realities that Shariputra has been exploring for years and deconstructing. Avalokiteshvara says, no, they don't exist. So how could that be? To study the way, the Buddha way, is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be verified by all things. To be verified by all things is to let the body and mind of the self and the body and mind of others drop off. There is a trace of realization that cannot be grasped. We endlessly keep expressing the ungraspable trace of realization. Lord Dogen. So Dogen has a bit of insight into the nature of emptiness. So within this list, the 5 skandhas, the 12 abodes of sensation, and the 18 elements. These are all categories. So you have the 6 senses, and then you have the organs, and then you have the processes. And so it's very involved, and this is all part of Shariputra's training and observations. Like, what constitutes a human being? Extremely important question. So that's what they were working with. And these are Buddhists. He's a Buddhist. And there are different sects, different focuses at this time, as there are now. We have different approaches. And so this teaching on shunyata, emptiness, is great medicine for everyone. But particularly for Shariputra and the disciples in the circle receiving this teaching. So the sutra proceeds. There is neither ignorance nor extinction of ignorance, and so forth down to neither old age and death nor extinction of old age and death. That's the first and the last part of the 12. The 12 links of dependent origination. And these are extremely important, and this is a very powerful Buddhist teaching. That basically the cycle of a human life within samsara, within ignorance, begins in ignorance, ends in old age and death. And this sutra is an exquisite exercise in brevity. So it only mentions the first and the last of the 12. There's no point in naming the other 10. And so the importance of this teaching is in a human life, without the practice of awakening, we will be living in ignorance and the basis of suffering and moving in a cycle of samsara. Birth and death, birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. And within this context is we're all bundles of karma. And as we move through this cycle, we're creating this karma. Well, is it good karma? Is it bad karma? Is it good and bad karma? Are we enlightened and we're beyond karma? So, extremely important questions. And here we cycle in the realm of, samsara. So what to do? There is neither ignorance nor extinction of ignorance, and so forth down to neither old age and death nor extinction of old age and death. There's no suffering, no cause, no cessation. So now we've moved in beyond ignorance and death into stating, Shariputra's or Avalokiteshvara stating that there is no suffering. That's the first Buddhist teaching. When the first turning of the wheel is, there is suffering. There is the cause of suffering. There is the cessation of suffering. And there is the path. Avalokiteshvara says they don't exist. So now we know that Shariputra's got sparks coming out of his head. Because what's going on? I was going to say that his hair was standing on end, but he had a shaved head. There's no suffering, no cause, no cessation. That's the first. And then there's no path. The Noble Eightfold Path is Buddha's primary teaching is the Eightfold Path. You stay on this path, you follow this path. And this is the medicine towards liberation. And Shariputra is saying, there is no path. There's no knowledge, and there's no attainment. With nothing to attain, a bodhisattva relies on prajna paramita, and thus the mind is without hindrance. Without hindrance. There is no fear. So a mind without hindrance and no fear, which is amazing because we are all processing that energy. Most of us. Far beyond all inverted views, one realizes nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future rely on prajna paramita. And thereby attain unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment. Therefore, know the prajna paramita as the great miraculous mantra, the great bright mantra, the supreme mantra, the incomparable mantra, which removes all suffering and is true, not false. The word mantra is interesting. It's actually part of our language now, but it's used mostly by journalists. And it's something where you're repeating something. It's a mantra. It's redundant repetition. And that's not what a mantra is. So it's wonderful that this word has entered our language, but it's inaccurate. Same as with myth. And oftentimes journalists use myth in writers. And that refers to mythology, which are stories that are part of our psyche. And they use myth as something that's like mostly misinformation. It's a myth. It's not correct. And so we use mantra that way, but that's not what mantra is. Mantra, in India, that's an old sacred, that's chanting sacred seed syllables that have a certain vibration. And so they're very important, very much so. So the word has entered our culture, but that's about it. But now, of course, we'll be chanting the mantra today. And it's very important. So they're working with sound. Sound has vibration and can be quite healing. And a mantra also, in this context, is used to protect the mind. So it's a mind protector. It's medicine. And I chant it at home a lot, and it works. It works. Rain falls for centuries, soaking the loose rocks in space. Sweet rain, the fire's out, the black snag glistens in the rain, and the last wisp of smoke floats up into the absolute cold, into the spiral whirls of fire, the storms of the Milky Way, Buddha incense in an empty world, black pit cold, and light-year flame tongue of the dragon licks the sun. The sun is but a morning star. Harry Snyder. And I open it up and expand it. And the fires are out for now. Therefore, know the Prajnaparamita as the great miraculous mantra, the great bright mantra, the supreme mantra, the incomparable mantra, which removes all suffering and is true, not false. So then you say, what is true, what is false? In this context, it's the truth of the Buddhist insight as opposed to ignorance. Therefore, we proclaim the Prajnaparamita mantra, the mantra that says, Gate, gate, paragate, parasam gate, bodhisva. Oftentimes that started with Om, which would be more considered a seed syllable of a mantra. Om gate gate para gate parasam gate bodhisva. Anyway, good medicine. So Shariputra has now been instructed in shunyata, emptiness. It's not nihilism. It's not like things don't exist and there is no meaning. It's an expression of our interconnectedness with everything. beyond the limitations of an isolated and individual self, which we are. We're real, we have a self, and it's important. And we have knowledge, and that's important. And it all has a function, but it's limited. So the spirit and medicine of the Heart Sutra is more about connecting with the interconnected, vibrating force field of energy of the universe, which we're part of. And if we're based in our heart chakra, I'd say we have a good connection with that. We all have access to that, the heart chakra. And when our mind is spinning, we lose touch with that and often don't make such good decisions. So it's about the interdependence and the interconnectedness of everything in the universe that we're part of. And when we're sitting zazen, we're plugged right into that. Your mind's cranking out thoughts, of course, what all our minds are. That's what they do. They excrete thoughts. There's thoughts. I was actually at a monastery in Thailand, and I remember there was a Dharma talk. Every morning at 5 a.m. there's a Dharma talk in the monastery. And the monk said, in one day's time, you process 30,000 stories and 60,000 emotions. And give or take a few. And I watch my mind, I go, he's kind of pretty correct. There's a lot. And the beauty of being able to sit is that we can come to the realization that, that's really happening. But, that's not who I am totally. Just, thoughts excreting, and that's fine. But we get to observe them and let that play out. And be able to continue to come back and sit and then revisit the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And we can embrace them that, okay, they are empty. But empty in a way that we're all interconnected and interdependent and alive. Are there any questions? I know you're out there.
Kogen?
What
do you feel is meant by inverted views?
Inverted views? My sense of that is my own inverted views, my own thinking process, which would be a hindrance. That's my interpretation, and when I can sit and see that and let that play out and let those thoughts go away, so that's my sense of inverted views. Yeah. You?
I was thinking of wrong views, or I don't know, the
ignorance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite of truth, I suppose.
Yeah, sure.
It's difficult for me because it's in black and white. It's very hard to, it seems like the whole teaching is about how when you think of things as black and white, you get confused.
Yeah. Dualities.
The inverted views itself seems to be that encompassing that kind of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Even boiling it down to true and false
Mm-hmm.
is confusing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's saying beyond true and false to me.
Right. Yeah, good question. That's important.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hi.
Along those same lines, I know that I've been kind of stopped up short also at the very end when it says, this is true, not false. And I think it comes from some of my early Christian background in Catholicism that if you're not for us, you're against us. You know, if you're not accepting this way, then, you know, you're doomed or damned or whatever. And I thank you for putting it in the context of these were Buddhist teachings that these are true to the Buddhist teachings and not against the Buddha or not opposite of Buddhist teachings. If I heard you right, or
Yeah.
maybe you could just say it again or expand on it a little bit because. I appreciate the fact that you answered my question before I even asked it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Hi. Well, you know, it's an important one. And, you know, it's so easy to fall into that trap, true and false. Who's right and wrong? Mm-hmm. You know, us and them. And that's the last place we need to be, right? So that's not coming from that place of, you know, I'm a Buddhist and this is right and you're not. That's a trap. I think it has more to do, you know, with the truth and realization of insight. And it's easy to get caught in those terms, just like emptiness. You know, emptiness and true and false. It is very easy to get into dualities, and which is what oftentimes we can tend to do, and what the mind can tend to do. And so forth, and that's not coming from that place really at all. It's coming from a place of examining the human condition, your own condition. You know, the Buddha taught time and again. This is what we're told, and I appreciate it. Is don't take my word for it. Look into the matter yourself. So, the Heart Sutra is the teaching. Fine, this is the teaching. Or the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. Practice it. Does it work for you? Is there any medicine in it? And so I believe that's what it gets right down to, is examining it to see if it's true for you. I can't say what is. I would like to say things, you know, that are positive that would help you, but if one examines it and says, well, it is true for me because I just examined it and I meditated with it and I experienced it and I find it to be very good medicine.
I wanted to also thank you or also say that I heard what you said about the mantra being some protection for the mind. Mm-hmm. Because I think, especially in these times, from my own self, there's a lot of anxiety spinning out, and I do need some protection from that. Either not listening to the news, or listening to music, or dancing, or being out in nature, or whatever. But I love the idea of the mantra as like this protection from the constant spinning of the 60,000 emotions and 30,000 thoughts per day. You know, so thank you.
Yeah.
Kogen.
Hi.
I know, or I think I know, that you have practiced with the Heart Sutra for a long time, and I was wondering if you could say a little bit about your experience of studying one sutra for a long time, maybe a different way that you work with it, or how you, how you feel it has been valuable in your practice specifically to be in relationship with one text for a long time?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I have bonded with it early on. I always thought, oh, this is fascinating, and stayed with it, memorized it, chanted it. When I was traveling in very difficult circumstances, in dangerous climates, I chanted the mantra, and I made it through. It's how can I say? Well, one aspect of the Heart Sutra is that it's ineffable. Certain elements of teachings actually can't be explained. However, we have to, because we are a species that uses language, and I love language, and we should celebrate it and dance with it. But the reason Buddha was sitting in silence is because he was transmitting something that ultimately language cannot explain. That's the spirit of ineffable. And I'm not trying to avoid your question, but that is an important aspect of, I would say, spiritual practice, as well as language. And so, generally speaking, the Heart Sutra has been a good, solid, grounded spiritual teaching. Once one examines it, I've had the good fortune to read several commentaries and over several times, and appreciate the scholarship and the deep spiritual practice of people that looked into it and would write about it. So that's been very informative. And also just chanting it and living with it and developing a relationship that just is very nourishing.
Yes, Kogen.
Hi.
So not so much a question, but just thanking you for presenting it as a question. For me, I've only known the Heart Sutra just from being chanted in here, and it's had this kind of mystery to it. And not that you've demystified it, but you've just opened up just your simple reading of it there, reading it as a conversation between two people. I'd never really thought of it in those terms. So next time it's chanted, I know I'm going to see it differently. And I just thank you for opening my mind up.
Oh yeah, my good fortune to be here and being able to participate in the fragrance of the Heart Sutra.
Kogen,
Hi.
can you tell us the translation of what the mantra means?
Aha.
I don't know if you wanted to
Oh, no,
reach that
that'll,
territory or
yeah.
not. But
I just never got there. What is that mantra anyway? Yeah, so it's Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisvaha. Gone, gone, gone beyond, gone completely beyond. Hail awakening. Now, interestingly enough, Kaz Tanahashi recently did a text on the Heart Sutra. And he goes, arrive, 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 completely arrive with everyone. So it's a flip side, but it works as well. Yeah. Buddha Buddha.